All right, welcome on into the Falls Count Anywhere podcast. This is Charlie Turner, along with John Rustino and Chris DiCarlo here with you as per usual. Gentlemen, today we got one of those shows teed up to where we have a great guest today that we're going to learn a few things about the wrestling business as we do this interview today. We have our resident historians waiting in the wings here as well. So let's get right to it, guys. Chris, go ahead and give these gentlemen their proper introduction.
Yes, a special show for a special occasion. And first, I'd like to welcome in a friend of the show, a great wrestling historian of not just the AWA, but all the territories, our good friend from the state of Minnesota, Mr. George Shiner.
Hey, guys.
Hey, George. Welcome back.
Always welcome.
Second special co-host for tonight, friend of the show, also wrestling historian, not only of the territories, but in all of Canada, our friend, Mr. Wes Maidment.
Greetings and salutations, gentlemen.
Hey, Wes. Welcome back, sir.
Thanks, Charlie.
And our main event guest for tonight, if you will, this man, when you talk of pro wrestling, you cannot not mention his name over the years. He started as a bodybuilder. He competed in NHRA drag racing. He became a pro wrestler, Mid-America, 4 different time tag team champion there. Just a great host and broadcaster throughout many territories in professional wrestling. Also awards with the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame in Waterloo, Iowa, and in Smoky Mountain. Legend, the one and only, the legendary Mr. Les Thatcher. Welcome.
Oh, wow, guys. That great introduction. I hope I can, stay up with it. But, we talk about all these historians, and I was just thinking, I'm so old that probably some of you historians weren't even born when I started in the business. So,
thanks for joining us, Les. It's awesome to have you on, sir.
It's great to be here. When George calls, I jump.
That's nice. That's
the way it is.
We appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, you know how George and our relationship started in a revolving bar in a hotel in Kansas City.
That is very true. And it was not only a revolving bar, it was, I think, a revolving night, because we literally, I think we opened it and we closed it. And that goes back, 40 some years or more.
Yeah, 85. No,
85 or 84, 80, something like that. Yeah.
Somewhere in there.
You wouldn't believe this. Les and I, we were attending a WFIA wrestling convention, and of which we were both members. And there was if I'm remembering correctly, there was a spot show, an indie show card that was going to be held. A lot of the people were going to travel, and it was a distance to drive to it, and they were going to go to this card. And there were a few of us that said, nah, we're not going to go. We'll stay close to the hotel. And Les and I, we got into a booth, and, it was give us a beer, and we'd talk, and give us a beer, and we'd talk. And this thing it was at the top of the hotel, and it was a revolving restaurant bar.
Cool.
And I don't think either of us could count the many times that thing went around before we finally decided to go to bed the next morning. But I love this man because we talked wrestling, and it just forged a special friendship. And I love him to death, even today.
Love you back, George.
You bet.
We went to a Kansas City Royals game, too.
We did. Yes, we did. We went. That was the first time I was at the Kansas City Royals, and John is a big baseball fan, too.
Yeah.
And, we went. And
just is that the George Brett era there, I guess?
Was Brett there at that time, Les?
George Brett?
Yeah.
Was he still playing ball in 85?
Yeah. I believe so.
When did the hemorrhoid story come out?
I'm a hardcore Dodger fan, so those guys don't resonate with me.
Well, they're going to be in the playoffs here coming up, the Dodgers, along with our goofy twins. So let's see what happens.
My Dodger history goes back to Brooklyn.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Wow.
I was a catcher in the Sandlot ball, so Campanella became my idol.
Wow.
Along with Cincinnati boy, and everybody there would tell you that Bench is the man. I'd say if Campy hadn't been in the car wreck and cut his career short, we'd be talking about Campy as the man. But hey, that's an argument for another day.
Yeah. Hey, let's talk some baseball, guys. Let's go for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I know I like a lot of sports, but my love, like George and Wes and all of ours, is classic pro wrestling since I was 5 years old, 1980. This is my life. So, guys, first, let's roll a couple classic clips, and then we'll discuss and go from there, if you will, John.
You got it.
Let's go to ringside for today's lineup with one of wrestling's former stars and your host on Southeastern Championship Wrestling, Les Thatcher.
Hello and welcome to Southeastern Championship Wrestling. I'm Les Thatcher, my co-host Phil Ray, and with us to start the program, Rip Smith. Rip, welcome aboard.
Thank you, Les. I want to thank you and Phil Rainey for having me.
Les, you haven't changed one bit.
Of course, we do have a reason. We're going to show a film of Gorgeous George Jr.
A wrestling star at Tri-Cities Southeastern Championship Wrestling.
Hello and welcome once again to Tri-Cities Southeastern Championship Wrestling. We've got a fine action-packed program for you today. We'll be seeing Don Diamond in action for his first start on our television program. All today on NWA Championship Wrestling. Right now we want to talk about the Southern Heavyweight title scene. Of course, Blackjack Willie, it is the...
That's why I'm here, Les. That's why
Okay, Kevin. Want to talk about the Southern
Yeah,
Heavyweight
let's talk
title?
about the Southern Heavyweight title. You know, I've been around here for a while, and I've...
Welcome to Southern Heavyweight Wrestling. I'm your host, Les Thatcher, and we've got a great lineup for you. Before we start talking about today's match. Got 63 years to cover, so.
All right.
Name there, Waterloo, Iowa.
First thing I got to know, Mr. Les Thatcher. First thing, do you still have that jacket with the collar? Is that like the Tony Montana look you had going there?
It was the 70s, man. It was just what can
I love
say?
it. I love it.
I was a clothes horse then. I was a young man. First of all, the first clip, that was Atlanta.
Yes, sir.
And I can tell you about that day because that was the first time Gordon and I had ever worked together. And I hadn't moved to Atlanta yet. There's a long story with that. I don't know if you want to hear the whole crazy story.
Go with it. Go with it.
Well, you know, I was working out of the Charlotte office for Crockett's, doing TV, wrestling, and everything. So when the war was going on in Atlanta, and Jack Briscoe and Tim Woods, they had Jack and Jerry and Tim had bought in, right? So Jack called me and he said, you know, Gordon's, shuttling back and forth every weekend to work the Atlanta show. So we need to get somebody in there. And I just think, you know, you'd be the guy to fill the spot. So, yeah, it did interest me, obviously, because that was the first TV that was getting a lot of, more wide exposure than your normal regional shows. But anyway, the Crockett's didn't want me to leave. And I had such a great relationship with them. I didn't want to ruin that either, right? So I'm just kind of sitting not knowing what to do. Eddie Graham calls me and he said, I understand there's a little hitch in the get along here. I said, yeah, there is. He said, well, here's what we're thinking you should do. Give your notice that you're coming to Florida to wrestle. And on your way to Florida, drop your furniture off in Atlanta. Right? Come down here and wrestle for a few weeks, and then you can go back to Atlanta where we want you. Because Eddie had a piece of this action as well, right?
Okay.
You can go back to Atlanta. And I'm thinking, that's a bit diabolical, I think. But, I was kind of, I don't know what, I didn't want to ruin the relationship with the Crockett's because it was sincerely a great time with them. And so anyway, finally, Jimmy Crockett Jr. Said, okay, they want you to come. Why don't you go? So that clip, I flew down that day for us. That was the first time we had worked together. And this was the Saturday, the day after Jack Briscoe had beat Harley in Houston for the title. So Jack had flown in to do an interview, but that match, you guys picked it up on on YouTube or something. But yeah, that's the only thing from Gordon and I in Atlanta that I know is floating around there. But to wrap that particular clip up, after the show, Jack is standing in the hallway talking to Gordon and I about it, winning the belt and his, starting the tours and stuff. So he's getting ready to go to the airport, and he says, I'm a little nervous. He said, this is the brand new belt. This was the one that everybody looks at now. And he said, Mr. Muchnick hasn't had it insured yet. So, yeah, well, we figure, it's got a nice case and everything. The case sitting there on the floor in the hallway. So somebody down the hall called Jack, he called Jack's name. He looked around. He said, I want to talk to you for a minute. So he wandered on down there. Gordon looks down at this case, and there's a office door right there, that we're standing by, and looks at me and he said, should we? I said, yeah, let's do. He opened the door, slid the case in, shut the door, and we're standing there talking. Jack comes back, said, man, I'm running late. I've got to get going. I was good talking to you guys. And where's the belt? Gordon says, what do you mean, where's the belt? Well, I set the case down here, right? Gordon said, do you have it? I said, no, I don't have it. And you can see the blood starting to drain out of Jack's face. It's like, Mr. Muchnick, that nice belt that you just gave me on Friday night, I lost it on Saturday morning.
Oh, man.
Atlanta, right? So Gordon took pity on him and said, we got it, and opened the door and gave him the belt so he could head to the airport. But yeah, when you ran that clip, I thought, my God, yes, I remember that day completely. Because like I say, it was the first time Gordon and I had ever actually sat down and worked as, I'd worked with him in Florida as a wrestler and been interviewed by him, but had never, not as a color man with him.
I wish there was more footage of that. Sorry, Wes.
How long did you work with him, Les?
Well, let's see, in Atlanta from June of 73 till February of 74.
Okay.
And actually, well, if you want to hear that story too, I can. The idea was to phase Gordon out, right? So he could stay back in Tampa, right, instead of making the trip. So when Leo Garibaldi was the booker, Bill Watts had a piece of the action there as well. So one day, Bill and Leo called me into Leo's office. We sat down. He said, we're thinking maybe now's the time to send, to let Gordon slide out. And, because, Leo had an idea to push me in the ring as well. I won the first ever 2-ring battle royal in Atlanta. And he was going to put Bobby Shane and I against one another in a program. So anyway, they said, maybe it's time now. And I said, guys, I've been thinking about this. Okay. We're in Atlanta where professional baseball has a broadcast team, professional football as well, basketball and hockey. And the talk in this office is about competing with them. So going back to an individual broadcaster, I think, is not competing with them. And Gordon and I work well together. So as long as it works out with the Tampa office and Gordon, I think we should hang on. And they agreed. So we just continued on. Then Jim Barnett bought it, right? Now, the name Thatcher came from Jim Barnett. He got tired. My real last name, for those who don't know, is Malady, Malady. It's Irish. And everybody butchers it. Malady, Malody. I mean, Christ, I don't even bother to correct people anymore. But I wrestled under that when I first started up in New England because there's a big Irish population in Boston and in that area. And then when I started with Indianapolis in 62, I used it, my real name initially. And then one day Les Ruffin came in the dressing room and said, Mr. Barnett's tired of all the ring announcers and the commentators butchering your last name. He would like to call you Les Thatcher. Is that all right? I was just getting my foot in the door and getting started. I'd call me any damn thing you want. I just want to, right? So I've been Thatcher ever since. Anyway, Barnett bought in, and I've always had a good, and still up till his passing, I had a good relationship with him. But anyway, so he's getting settled. We're working, and everything's going on. So one day he calls me in the office and says, "Lastly, I gave you the name Thatcher, and we have a good history." I said, "Yes, Jim." I didn't know where this was going. He said, "Well, you know, I don't want to just be here in Atlanta, but I want to buy in to the Tampa office as well. And to do that, I've got to kiss Eddie's ass." Right. And I can't afford two broadcasters, although it's very nice because of my limousine and my penthouse and this and that. I think, "Jim, I don't want you to give up any of that for me," you know. So he says, "So we're going to have to find you another place to go." He said, "Now I've talked to Jimmy Crockett and George Scott in Charlotte, and they would love to have you back, or you can go elsewhere." I said, "Charlotte works for me, Jim. I'll go," you know. So I cost myself, in essence, the job, because I'm guessing if Gordon had stopped coming, you know, that I would have, you know, I don't know that Jim would have switched us out. Maybe he would have. Crazy thing, a number of years later, I was offered Gordon's job in Tampa because for some reason he had pissed Eddie off, right, or something. And I mean, and it was a good offer and everything. The crazy story about that is that they flew me down. I worked at set in Gordon down there. I didn't know why. But you know, I got a call and, "Hey, we want you to come in, sit in with Gordon." Okay. So afterwards, we go into Eddie's office. There's Eddie, Dusty, Kevin Sullivan, Jerry Briscoe, myself, Mike Graham. And so then they drop it on me. "We want to let Gordon go. We want you to fill his spot." And I mean, Mike Graham had owned some condos at the time. He said, "I'll even, you know, put you up one of my condos." And I knew that if they were going to get rid of him, you know, Gordon and I were friends. But if they're going to get rid of him, obviously somebody's going to fill that spot. So why not? And so we didn't, you know, finalize everything right there. And they said, "We'll get back to you." Well, the funny story, Jerry Briscoe tells me the funny story. Now it's like Eddie says to Dusty, who's going to tell Gordon he's finished?" Dusty said, "Well, you are. You're the owner." Right? And everybody, and long story short, this is what starts with the office, and everybody's passing the buck. So ultimately, nobody told Gordon he was finished, and I never went to Tampa.
Okay.
Wow.
Wow. Well, before we get into a lot more with our main event guest here, Mr. Thatcher, let's roll the other two clips, and then we'll just go from there, guys. Okay. This here is rare footage from the Amarillo, Texas territory, owned by the Funks.
Out of the referee's position is the side headlock by Reggie Parks. Parks steps in front. Double headlock, a break. Dillon down for a 1 count. 38-pound international heavyweight champion James J. Dillon. And his opponent across the way in the red corner, making his first appearance here on Championship Wrestling from San Jose, California, weighing in at 240 pounds, Manny Fernandez. Referee Terry Garvin waiting for the bell. There it is. The bell sounds.
A young J.J. Dillon. Oh, Pearl Harbor attack. That was the other announcer here. I didn't get his name.
This is a 1-fall or 20-minute contest. Your referee, Terry Garvin, is back. Sports fans, just to bring some of the out, you saw the 8th wonder of the world.
Andre was everywhere.
Yeah, he sure was.
Ted DiBiase. Dick Murdoch against the big Tank Patton.
Blackjack Mulligan sitting in with, well, there he is right there.
Nice.
And gentlemen, classic. Gotta love studio wrestling indeed, but classic Amarillo, Texas territory footage there. And John, let's roll one more clip, and we'll get into it.
It's the USWA, the United States Wrestling Association. Hi, everybody. This is your buddy Mark Durant from the Sportatorium in Dallas, welcoming you to this debut edition of the United States Wrestling Association. And a spectacular card will enable you to remember this big date for a long, long time. We've got a marvelous main event. Jeff Jarrett and Maniac Matt Moore tag teaming against Cactus.
The young Jeff Jarrett.
Dapper Danny Davis before he was dangerous, I think, huh?
I think that was two different people, though.
Okay, I was gonna say that's gonna fall into the Steven Regal category. Two different Steven Regals.
Right. Two different. That was Nightmare Danny Davis. He's a wrestler, and then we know Danny Davis, the referee.
Yep.
That was because we talked about it a couple of shows ago, George. That was USWA changed into the Global Wrestling Federation, changed into the NWA, all from the historic Dallas, Texas Sportatorium there. But let's all get into it. And of course, so many questions for Mr. Les Thatcher. Guys, go ahead.
Well, one of the things I'd say first, just let me touch on this. Having traveled around, had the honor to travel around to many of the old territories before 1984, there were certain venues that just oozed wrestling. And the Sportatorium was one of them. It was just, I don't know, as a fan, I just loved going to Dallas and going to the Sportatorium. And by today's standards, it'd be the pit of the earth. But back then, just for wrestling, it was a cool place. And Les, did you ever work down in Dallas?
Never worked any territory in Texas. Changed lanes in Dallas.
Okay.
I've done training camps in San Antonio with Rudy Gonzalez, but never wrestled in the state at all.
When did you start training?
Training people?
Yeah.
I started, actually, J.J. Dillon and Scott Casey and a couple of guys like that would tell you I started when I was still wrestling. Terry Taylor, they give me credit for part of, holding their hands. JJ was a babyface, and they partnered him with me in the Carolinas for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And same with Scott Casey. And wow. But actually, to start in the school was in 92. Actually, by chance. I was training bodybuilders and doing competitive bodybuilding at the time, working for Perillo Performance. So John worked with pro bodybuilders, had a line of supplements, and had a training facility in Cincinnati. And Bob Harmon, the original Beautiful Bobby, who was a Cincinnati boy,
Mm-hmm.
he called me one day and was telling me about this guy that had a wrestling school and had an idiot for a trainer. And of course, that was his words, not mine, and that if the guy didn't get a competent trainer, that these kids would probably leave, the young kids would leave him. And I said, okay, but why are you telling me that? Well, because you're the guy. I said, you're crazy. You know, I'm doing this, and I you know, do me a favor, he said. They're having a match on the other side of town on Saturday night. Meet me and go to the matches with me. So I said, okay, you know, got nothing else to do. So I went. This is the first independent show that Les Thatcher has ever seen. And he was horrified, to be quite frank.
I bet.
Yes. So anyway, I'm sitting there with Bob and this guy that owns the school. And these two guys, and it's nothing good, obviously, but these two guys are in the ring, and the one guy goes out and gets a chair. And I can tell by the way he's holding it when he comes in, he does not know how to use it, right? And sure enough, he didn't, because he popped this other guy, and the other guy was out on his feet, basically. Somebody had to go out and escort him out of the ring. But more to the point, I'm watching this, and I go, and so I leaned over to Bob Harmon, and I said, ask him how long this kid's been wrestling. The one swinging the chair. I said, he's dangerous. He doesn't know what he's doing. So Bob asked the guy that owns the school, and Bob comes back to me. He says, he's been to 5 training sessions.
Oh, my God.
Wow.
He said, that's what I said. Only I used another language. So this is what made me decide I'm going to try this. I had, never thought about it, doing it, but once I got started, I love creating things. It was obviously with the magazines and T-shirts and television and everything. So once I got into it, I sunk my teeth into it, and which you need a trainer today. I'm ready, boys. Just send me a plane ticket. Let's go to work. But yeah, that's when I first started. And then this guy that owned the school was a charlatan, is a nice way of saying it, is it not? And so he got upset because he wasn't the major player anymore. Of course, he didn't know anything, right?
Yeah.
So then he shorted me on money at a couple of times. So anyway, some of these guys wanted to pull away, and one of the kids said, "Hey, listen, if you'll partner with me, I'll go to ring." And I said, okay, let's do that. So that's how HWA started. And, and then once we got the MTV special, True Life, I'm a Pro Wrestler, the phone calls started, the emails started, excuse me. And, our reputation grew. And then WWE contacted me. But I signed with WCW first because they were dragging their feet. Then WCW sold to WWE. I may be the only guy that lost 2 training jobs due to corporate downsizing. Because when I left WWE, that was when they had let go a lot of wrestlers and office staff, and they were just downsizing. So, but yeah, that's how I got started. And tell you the truth, I love doing it. I really do. Wrestling is my life. It's who I am. It's what I do. And I don't, honestly, I'm working with my son. He has 2 lots that he sells storage units and carports and that sort of thing. And it's an existence, and I love my son, but I want to be in the wrestling business.
One of the things that I always found interesting is that a lot of times when we look at older wrestlers, let's just put it that way, they usually did one thing. They wrestled, and when their career was done, they moved on. Unless you, if I'm saying it right, I think you kept reinventing Les Thatcher, because not only were you a great wrestler, and I do mean that sincerely. I saw you when you're in your younger days, and you were just smooth and very good in the ring. A pleasure to watch. But you transitioned many times. You got into writing, you were publishing magazines. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, I think you did the very first color magazine for the WWF.
Yes.
Back in the late 70s.
It was in the it was in
78 or 79.
Mid-center. I did the one and only NWA magazine.
Yes.
It was done in
Yes.
75 with Terry on the cover. We
Right.
did that from the Crockett office. And there's never been another one done since that I'm aware of. And plus the Mid-Atlantic magazines. Those are,
The Mid-Atlantic ones were great.
So, yeah.
Well,
But,
You know what my dear friend George South said when he talks about, if I'm going to start territory, I'm going to hire Les Thatcher. He fills a spot for 12 people, right? And then we'll get the Armstrong family.
Because you do everything.
All this was just opportunity. I mean,
Sure.
I mean, I didn't go out and look at Cole Cabana when I was on his podcast in Waterloo. Said, "Well, you're a hustler just like me," and I said, "I guess," but I never considered myself. It was just somebody said, "Would you like to try this?" And I said, "Yes." That's all. And plus anything. I would say this: if the good Lord takes me tomorrow, the thing about what I've done in the business, I feel I've tried to do things to enhance the industry, to give it credibility, to give it class. And I've never tried to change anything inside the ring between the bells. And I wish other people had done that as well. But we're talking about old school. Realize we're talking about the bookers, the guys with the great stories were wrestlers. And if you see a difference today in the two major companies, and I'm talking about WWE and AEW, is that the people behind the scene, well, there's a lot of people in AEW that know what to do. It's just, I think they're being paid not to talk about it or to do something else. I mean, it's a business, so you do what you're paid to do.
Right.
But if you followed the bloodline and all that, that's the greatest storytelling that's been done in this business in years.
Good stuff. Yeah.
And they've taken their time. That's the other thing.
Yes.
Because I'm a horrible critic. I'm a bad critic about myself, but I'm probably even worse about the business in general. But the major thing, if you stop to think, 18 months ago, Sami Zayn was a mid-card guy that you laughed at. Today, he's one of the hottest damn baby faces in the business.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Dominic Mysterio was a goofy kid. And the first time I heard him talk about being out of prison, I thought, is this a rib, right?
It's a hard time, yeah.
Right? And now he's a hot heel.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing part of that is Michael Hayes, who is old school, and Paul Heyman. And I know that Hunter has a lot of old school in it, because I know Harley used to say that Hunter would watch Harley's old tapes and then call Harley and talk to him about it and stuff. So yeah, they're on a roll. That I looked at that I talked about it on a couple other podcasts and said, this is like when a territory got hot back in the day, right? WWE's at a point they couldn't make a mistake if they tried. I mean, they got LA Knight, who's a former HWA trainee as well. He's red hot now, but
yeah.
It's like they can't make a mistake if they wanted to, right?
They're
on fire.
I'm sorry. That's the one thing I wanted to ask you about, and I didn't realize the training aspect of your career and the influence you've had on a lot of wrestlers today. I was just reading, when I was researching you a little bit before the show, I was reading an article posted from June of this year out of Charleston, South Carolina, the Post and Courier. And you did a great interview with them I was reading. And one of the things that stood out to me was Adam Cole had mentioned you in this article, and he just said how influential you were to him. I'm kind of paraphrasing a little bit here. And he said when he first met you, he was so green. He was brand new in the business, and he sat down and he tried to absorb so much from you. And then down the road, he stated that about 6 months later, he would look back and say, oh, that's what Les meant when he said this. Things kind of clicked later on. So when you see these guys now, AEW, Adam Cole, you mentioned some of the other guys there, LA Knight, that sense of pride's got to be great to see these guys rise and be there.
Blade started with me. That was Pepper Parks when he wrestled for me. Well, Moxley is an HWA graduate as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, excuse me. It's the thing with Adam. I was going to tell you, when we first met, he was starting to train at CZW in Philadelphia. and I was doing my. I did a couple camps up there for them, and this was the first time I was ever been in the big Philadelphia airport, right? The big modern one. And so I'm just going, and then get my baggage. And so I walk out and I call over to, and tell them, where are you? I'm at this exit number, this or that, right? Okay, we're sending this guy to get you. Should be there in 15 minutes. 20 minutes, 25 minutes later, I call again and I said, did he get lost or what? He can't find you. I said, all I can tell you is, if there's another name, and then I saw one airport employee. I said, is there another way to explain where I'm standing to somebody on the phone? No, he said, this is it. So anyway, he told me, he said, well, he's a green kid just learning. And he's nervous as hell because he's afraid you're going to chew his ass out, for not being able to find you. And that kid was Adam Cole.
Okay.
Right. And so when I got in the car, he's like, and so I picked at him a little bit. I didn't really climb on him, but that's how we first met. But yeah, I love Adam. He's a hell. I'll tell you what, Undisputed Era, when they were one unit in NXT, if I had a promotion today and I could put that back together, I'd do it in a heartbeat. Every one of them could promo, every one of them could work. And I said work, not entertain, not fly, not jump around, work, right? And they were all good athletes. So yeah, I really liked them. But yeah, Adam's super guy.
Les, we see the indies, if you want to call them these days. And I have a friend who is a wrestler, and he said, how can you learn wrestling at a school when those people never made it even, they didn't even get proper training. So if there's 2 or 3 generations of people that never really got proper training, how can they teach anything? How can they instill anything? Where a guy like you, who, as you said, it's been your life. It's been your absolute life. And that's a testament to your love of the sport and what you do. But it's just awful. And I use that word, I don't know, bad, terrible, whatever, to see guys that, like you said, that guy picked up the chair. He didn't know what he was doing. And that it should become natural because you've done it over and over and over. You would have shown these guys over and over and over. Don't pick it up by the legs, pick it up by the back, or pick it up this way. And it's just nice to hear you talk about perfecting these people and putting them into a mindset where they're going to make it in their career, as opposed to nickel and dime guys that are still in their own city and never traveled out.
Yeah, there's a lot of pseudo trainers that bought a ring and, well, I'm a trainer.
Yeah,
and I'm Jesus Christ. You want to see the nail holes in my hands? That's, it's the same thing. But no, well, I'll tell you, I just did a Zoominar with one of my best trainees ever, Nigel McGuinness, this past Monday.
Great guy, by the way.
Oh, he is a first class guy. I was signed to book a tournament in Los Angeles in 2012-13, a year-long tournament. And Nigel helped me with that. And you guys would have enjoyed that, and I'll tell you about that. But we were talking about that same thing on there about learning the proper way. And I said, one of the things that bothers me about what I watch with the current product is the lack of details and the sloppy work. And what I mean by that, but not protecting your opponent, and a lot of it has, because that's something. Well, and here's the other thing: if you left my school with my blessing, then you could call a match on the fly.
Yeah.
And I try to explain to kids now, if I do like a seminar or a weekend camp or something, look, this is a business. If the people that are paying you want you to do paint by numbers and lay it all out in the back, then you do that. But the point is, we all have this one frailty, being human beings, we make mistakes. And if you're in the middle of a match and something happens, let's say your opponent comes up with a hamstring, not bad enough to stop, but he was supposed to beat you with some kind of wild thing off top rope. He can't get to the top rope now. What are you going to do? Somebody needs to know how to change the finish and set this match on another path. And if neither one of you can call it in the ring, are you going to excuse us, ladies and gentlemen? We need to go back for 45 more minutes in the back and lay out another match, and we'll be back, right? I mean, plus that's the art to me of the business. They're going out there. Well, let's say George and I are in a match in Minneapolis tonight. We blow the roof off the place. We can take that same match to Chicago tomorrow, and the people sit on their hands. We better be able to change gears.
Yeah.
You know, and so many of these kids can't do that. I mean, they're, you know, and plus, well, one of the things I've seen in AEW is just a lot of sloppy work. There's a guy that posts the AEW botches on X or Twitter or whatever the hell you want to call it. And I said the first time I saw those, if this were my promotion and that tape had been put up, the first thing I was going to do when I had my whole crew in the building was say, sit down, and here's the story. I don't want to see anything that guy could put out there. Never mind that it's out there. It couldn't be out there if you didn't do it or screw it up, right? So, I mean, to me, it's taking pride in your work, right? When I see a guy on camera, I want to kill him. I mean, I want to hit him with a baseball bat.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a, you know, gigging yourself was an art that's, you know, within itself.
Yes.
If I got juice and got to the back and the guys didn't see me do it, then I knew nobody saw me do it, right? But I saw, and I won't even go mention names, laying on his back, wide open. It's insane. I mean, it is completely insane.
You know, Les, one of the things that was brought out is changing, you know, working with your opponent and knowing somebody can change the finish if you need to or do something different. And you mentioned about the crowd using Minneapolis and Chicago, and you do the same match 2 nights in a row. And I remember Red Bastien telling me, he said, the one thing that you had to do in any town you went into is you had to read your audience and know that what you did last night in Minneapolis, it may not be as kosher or go over or the fans got it in Chicago or vice versa, wherever it was. And he said, and that was important that we had to go in, and he was talking about himself and whoever his opponent was. And he says, we had to go in and on the fly, we had to be able to do something different to make that crowd come alive or react to what we were doing. And last night it would have been a different story. And I liked when you used that analogy.
Yeah, it's a whole nother world now, and which is a shame, quite frankly. You know, it's like, well, the nuances are the things that make the big things work. They're the things that tie the big things together. But I don't see a lot of the nuances any longer. It's like if you and I are exchanging shots, I'm going to sell your fourth shot different than I sell your first shot. And I'm going to sell the first one depending on where we're at in the match and who's been on top and what you've done to me before you throw that. But I don't, you know, if I see, I don't care who they are, 2 guys stand in the middle of the ring exchanging 20 forearms or 20 punches and nobody goes down. No, the only thing I say, neither one of these guys know how to punch. I mean, you know.
Well, I think the major difference, if we're talking yesterday and today, at least this is my perception of it, you guys showed us it was real and you made us believe by the things that you did, and you had a storyline to tell in the ring and you worked it to the finish where the finish made sense. You know, whether it be putting the 3 drop kicks and a pin or whatever it was. And today we see guys flying off of tops of cages and onto 15 tables and falling off a ladder and getting, you know, hit with chairs, and they're still walking.
Yeah.
And
now they're making a comeback.
Yeah.
There is no believability there.
No, there's not. They're video games instead of being wrestlers.
That's a good analogy.
You got that right. That's so sad. for what we love from back in the day, George, right? So sad.
Definitely. And I want to tell you guys, I never had a chance to see Les Thatcher in his later years, but I did see him on some of his earliest work back in the later 60s, mid 60s. And as I said earlier, Les, you were smooth, at least my perception as a young kid back then. I mean, in the 60s, I was 14, 15, 16 years old, but you were smooth. You made it real. What you did looked real. You usually had an opponent that understood what you were doing and you understood what he was doing. And I could believe what you were doing was real. And that, if you can do that to a fan, even if they can suspend that disbelief for a little bit, you're succeeded. Today, I'm sorry, it's not real. And they don't even pretend that it is.
Well, a huge part of, if you want to make a comparison, right? When I went to Boston in February 1960 to start learning to be a pro wrestler, I believed it then.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I became a fan at age 9. I was 19 when I got on the Greyhound bus to go to Boston. But I believed. I mean, and they helped me maintain that belief by handing me my ass the first couple of weeks that I was there, right? And a lot of kids and I had my first match July the 4th, 1960.
Ronnie Hill.
Huh? Yeah, Ronnie Hill, right. And these kids will say, when they smarten you up? I said, July the 4th, 1960, not a day before.
Yep.
I lived in a rooming house with Alex Medina, Ronnie Dupree, Pat Patterson, Terry Garvin, Johnny Mann, Don Kindred, Black Magic. And they were friendly. I hung out, socialized with them in the building, and we went to lunch together. So they never popped in front of me, ever. They never said, let us smart, and then morning of July the 4th, Tony sent one of his sons over to the rooming house and said, Dad wants to see you at the office. And I'm thinking, we're not training today. Am I in trouble? I was afraid I was getting called on the carpet. So I go over and he said, today is your day. Excuse me. Today is your day. You're going to Blue Hills, Maine to wrestle. I know you've got your boots and your trunks. Go pack your bag, come back, and we'll talk about it. So I went and came back. And the way they were actually teaching us to work without telling us it was a work, they would say, okay, tonight we're not going to really, tug around and work on the mat. What I want you guys to do is pretend like you're having a professional wrestling match. Use the holds, but don't apply pressure because you're not getting paid and we're not, it doesn't matter about a winner or a loser. So they're teaching us then how to, to be loose, how to work in essence. So anyway, when I come back, he said, sit down. And so he's telling me, he says, you know how you train when you just weren't applying pressure? I said, yes, sir. Well, that's what they're going to do with you today. But he still wasn't telling me after today that it was still going to be that way, right? For the rest of my life. He wasn't sure yet, right? Today they're going to take care of you. Maybe not tomorrow. And then the rest of my education was in a little Ford Falcon that belonged to Red Sasso, who played football at Boston College. He was a local product. Looked a little like the Bruiser, only much younger. Anyway, he in Bull, Montana, and Ronnie Hill, and me in this little Falcon going to Blue Hills, Maine. And then that 200 plus miles, I got another education, right, in the car and coming home that night. And that's the way it started. The trouble today, the kids come in knowing it's not a shoot. They know it's predetermined. I don't even know if they know what the word work means, but they know it's not real. And so they come in figuring, okay, I can act. And they're all disappointed sometimes to find out, gosh, that really hurts. Or when you fall, there's no mattress to land on you.
Right.
It's a whole different mindset when with the kid. And the other thing is, well, J.J. Dillon, who was on the tape, he said to me a number of years ago, he said, when our generation quits teaching, it's over.
Yeah.
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 And thank God there are some guys that that are younger than us that subscribe to that same thing. Otherwise, I would be worried when the good Lord called me home that the business would end up being a vaudeville show. But go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead, sir.
Les, let me ask you this. Do you think, and I've heard some people talk about this, do you think there's ever a time that we could go back to that era where we could make the fans believe again, where the fans did want to believe again, and maybe they didn't even know that it wasn't predetermined? Or do you think that horse has left the stable and it's never going to be possible?
I think you can draw them in with a no. Listen, you watch Law and Order.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
You get excited about it. Does it draw you in? You know, that's not a shoot, right?
Right.
I knew Roy Rogers wasn't really killing those bad guys when I was 9 years old,
There you go.
but he drew me in, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, that's an example that I use with kids too. I said, wait a minute, tell me a movie you've seen more than once. And I said, you know why? Well, I use Scarface as an example, right? You're watching Scarface from a child to the big shootout with the bear in his face and the Coke, and you know, it took 2 hours to get to the Coke. You guys are taking 15 seconds, right? To go from 0 to 150, right? And the other reason you're going back and watching Scarface more than once is because a great storyline, great acting, and they bring you along and you grow with it and you become a part of it because they're going slow enough that you understand the story. It's like, and it's also, I use a book. Do any of you read here? And somebody, okay, how do you get to, you don't run through the book like this and catch a paragraph there and a chapter there. You turn the pages slowly and take in the content.
Yeah.
So to me, we can run this great spot, but let's come back to the hold. Why? Well, for one reason, we can catch our breath, but for another reason, it gives the fans, a chance to absorb what we just did, right? And then we can go and build and go peaks and valleys. Now, can we tell them about it again? We won't have to draw them. I mentioned the tournament Nigel and I booked. Let me tell you guys would have enjoyed this, okay? Whole different concept. We had Adam Cole was in it, Gargano, Gulak, Chase Stevens. I had some Tim Thatcher, right? Adam Pearce, Adam Page, before Page was a big star. Anyway, the deal was this. The match to advance, and the match was 10 minutes long. We had 4 55-inch flat screens, one mounted on posts outside the ring at each corner. Those were positioned so the fans could see them, but the guys in the ring could see them as well. Okay. Each match was 10 minutes. On those flat screens were like basketball scoreboards. Let's say George Shire is representing AWA. His name's in one of the AWA logo. Les Thatcher's representing NWA. Here's, with the NWA logo. Now, pin, submission, scores you a point. Go to your neutral corners and take a short break and come right back. The clocks are like a basketball clock, right? A scoreboard clock. Those are running. Everybody can watch it, okay? At the end of the 10 minutes, it's whoever has the most points moves to the next round. If at the end of 10 minutes, you guys are tied, there's a 3-minute sudden death. If at the end of the sudden death, there's still a draw, then you're both eliminated and substitutes take your place in the second round, okay? The main thing I had to make a point to all these guys the first time around, you will not touch my referee. You can get nose to nose with him and argue all you want. But if you push him, slap him, grab him, he will disqualify you and give a point to your opponent. You will break on 4 on the ropes, or 5, you will be disqualified. Not maybe. They're not going to count to 106, right? And on the floor, you've got 10 to get, you got 9 to get back in the ring, 10, you're gone. So you're going to wrestle. Now, this was a young promoter, David Jackson was his name, real nice young man. But it was kind of, and then we all sat down, Nigel and I and David, and kind of put this, refined it a little bit. But we had tremendous talent. I mean, guys, well, Blade, only under another name, was part of that. I was mentioned who was some of the kids we had. Willie Mack is another one. But anyway, now we didn't, first of all, in Los Angeles, if we'd have taken that to the East Coast, I think we'd have started people talking. I'd never worked in LA. I had never booked anything in LA. And I realized why people, if you live on one side of LA, you don't drive the other side unless it's an emergency, because I've been in that traffic. But the crowds that we drew, we didn't draw anything big. The venues weren't that great, but they got into these matches, right? And then they would start to count down on the clock. And the thing that Nigel, we were talking about this on the Zoominar, the thing that Nigel and I got into was our finishes were misdirections, right? Just when you thought, well, Blade, as under his name of Pepper Parks, and it was in the first round against Colt Cabana. Now, everybody in Los Angeles knows, it's a wrestling fan, knows how Colt is, and very few people would have known who Pepper was at the time. So there, the know-it-all fans, well, we know who's going to win this one, right? It's going to be Colt. So Pepper gets up on him 2-0. And now Colt's got it. And here's the other thing. There's a lot of psychology. Adam Cole loved this. He said, hey, you really got to use psychology. Realize in a regular match, if I put you in a Boston Crab, you're going to fight for the ropes. You're going to try to sustain. You're not going to want to give up right away. You're going to stay in the match. But in the tournament, the way we had it structured, if I got you in that crab, you're going to tap right away to save those legs. And so I can't wear you down, right? So, and then you can also use that clock, like Colt. Anyway, they got going. Colt was able to catch back up with Pepper. So we go into the overtime. And they figure Colt's comes back with the same finish twice to get them into the overtime. So he's got Pepper's number now. So they get where it looks like Colt is going to get him. They go down to like 2 minutes and 30 seconds. And Pep hooks him with something quick. 1, 2, 3, boom. Nigel and I were like two kids. We'd high five, when we see, but it was the thing of taking the people in one way, Law and Order again, right? Just when you think in that first segment, I know who killed him. The second segment, they're taking you a whole nother direction. That was the beautiful thing about the old days, right? And that was the beautiful thing about the bloodline thing. Just you knew they were going to kill Sammy, and ended up Sammy killed them.
Yeah.
It's about suspense. And that's what's missing, I think, a lot of the time, is the suspense. There isn't any.
Well, you mentioned the most important thing, Les, the fact that there was always a story being told, and you could take your fans in different directions, pull that surprise finish or however you were going to do it. And I think maybe today, I don't watch the product at all closely, but I don't see those storylines being taken full course. I see them abandoning ship, if you want to call it that. Yeah. And nothing seems to come to a conclusion. And just when you think there's something big going to happen, they're not even together anymore.
Well, I think with AEW is Tony Khan just likes cool matches.
Yeah.
I think if they're going any place past that one cool match, I tell guys, he puts, if you and I were working, any of you guys and I were working an angle back in the day, we may take 3 weeks, 4 weeks, depending, right. They take longer than that. But we told the story a little bit at a time.
Right.
And he puts these guys together. It's like he's putting the fourth week in the first week's place. Plus, when he's called Texas Death Match. I don't know how many times. He's never had one. It's just chairs fighting on the floor, and everything goes, but they have a different name. There's no technical excellence involved,
Right.
no details, no way to separate things, and with AEW, it's like there's a run-in every match.
Yes.
Jesus, is like a revolving door.
Well, and that's the thing. There's in the old days, it was one thing that happened. You didn't have four wrestlers doing the same thing in their match.
Yeah.
You had your match, they had theirs.
Yeah. Well, we're talking about taking time to build it. One of my favorite angles I was ever in, it was one of the first big ones that ever happened for me, was in 1967 in Charlotte. And in September, in a big Coliseum match, it was Becker and Weaver against the Infernos. That's Frankie Kane and Rocky Smith, with J.C. Dykes as a manager. Great heel team. And Becker and Weaver were the hottest baby faces there for like 100 years, for God's sake. Anyway, in the first fall, the referee goes down and he can't continue. And I'm standing on the outside watching in my suit and tie. And so the ring announcer goes and the other referees have left the building, come back. And anyway, they recruit me to referee. And long story short, I end up it comes down that the baby faces win the match. So as Weaver and Becker start to leave the ring, Rocky grabs me, pins my arms back, and JC throws a fire. Down I go. Baby faces come back, save me. Weaver throws a towel over my head, shoot me into the locker room, out the back door into Rudy K's back of his car, takes me home, shave an eyebrow, do all the setup, right? This is in September. The blow off was Christmas night.
Wow.
Did a 6-man tag in the same Coliseum.
Yeah.
And we set a record for a Christmas house. But we took 2 months to get there, right? And but the details, I went the week after the burn, I was in every town that the Charlotte TV hit, and they just introduced me, right, to show the burn and why it happened, and that just further the story. I was off wrestling for a couple of weeks, and then finally started back. And of course, the heels would always go for this, the burn, and so we had a little story to tell there too. And so there was I'd go in once a week. Well, I was in the office more than once a week, but once a week I'd go to this is Jim Crockett Sr. And he'd say, "Okay, baby, maybe the scar gets a little smaller this week, right? So we take a little bit off." But it was about details.
Yeah.
So if I'm boring you guys, say
no.
No, I was coughing, by the way, not yawning, for the record.
Perfect.
Anyway, when they called me in the office to do this, we're talking about details, right? There's JC and the Infernos, Johnny, George, Mr. Crockett Sr., and myself, and George Hardman, who was an assistant. But anyway, so they're sitting down figuring out how to do this, right? Okay, first of all, Les is going to be a referee. We don't want anybody to know that. So Mr. Crockett says to me, "Hey, baby, wear the best suit you got. If we tear it up, we'll pay for it. Not a problem, right?" And so then so that means that there can't be another referee in the building. He says to George Harbin, he said, now they always use more than one referee in the big Coliseum shows. He said, during that second intermission, you be sure those referees are out of this building and gone. Details. Then they're thinking, okay, we're going to throw the fire. Les is going down. Weaver can cover him with a towel. But Weaver says, no, those, what they didn't call them EMTs then, but the ambulance guys are going to want to take him to the hospital. We got to come up with something that we can't let that happen. So somebody came up with the idea that I have a phobia about ambulances. So
oh, wow. Good.
Johnny and them said, okay, we'll take him because he has a thing about ambulances, right? So Rudy K was my next door neighbor in Charlotte. You don't drive, ride with Rudy. And when that third fall starts, Rudy's car is going to be sitting at the back door of the locker room. your bag's going to be in his car. And the minute Johnny and George get you through that dressing room door, shoot out the back, get on the back floor, and get him out of that parking lot before the crowd breaks, so they don't see you.
Yeah.
Details, right? I mean, and we sit there, and if somebody came up with an idea, they'd say, "Well, they believe that." Well, maybe. And they change it as they thought they wouldn't. You know, it was about the little things and the details.
Absolutely. Last one thing I wanted to ask you about, sir, was as I was reading through that article that I had read on you through the Post and Courier article, you used to run you created and produced the Brian Pillman memorial shows. And speaking of today's wrestling, have you had a chance to speak or coach or train Brian Pillman Jr. at all?
Well, you know what? He called me when he first came out of Lance Storm's school, right? And he said, Steve Austin and Lance Storms said I should call you. And I said, okay. So he came over to the house and we sat and we talked and looked at it. He had some video in his phone. And of course, I'm very critical about what I watch. But you know, one of the things that I told him initially was I said, a lot of people, because of your name, are going to blow smoke up your butt. Be aware of that and don't buy into all of it. You will be, it would be a problem if you do, because and the best thing that's happened to him, I think now, is that he's at the Performance Center. He'll work with, the good trainers there. And because I think he was getting a little caught. I mean, I haven't talked to him, but just in watching, right? And Tony Khan let him go. But the kid's got a lot of potential, and he wants it. Well, he was here. Well, we've got a set of DVDs out with the whole Pillman thing on it. It's the 20th anniversary of the Brian Pillman Memorial Shows Anthology. All four shows are disc and extras from guys that were on there and all sorts of things. Yeah, I'm selling you on Bible. Joe Dombrowski, Joe handles all that, plus the HWA tapes and stuff. But those, God, I never expected. When we decided, I said, let's have a little show to help Brian's family. That was a little show. The little show grew into a very large show.
Yes.
But the thing I'm proud of is that the only place on this planet that you could see ECW, WCW, and WWF people all under the same roof on the same night was at the Pillman show.
Yeah.
And part of that, being proud of that, is the fact that those promotions all trusted me to put all three of their brands on the same show, that I wouldn't screw somebody over or mess something up, right?
Right.
And, but yeah, we raised in the 120,000 over the four shows.
Wow.
Good.
Excellent. Excellent.
And there was all, they were so, the special thing was that all these guys worked for nothing, and they worked their asses off, to be quite frank. On that first show, the first one was at Brian's junior high school gym where Brian had gone to school. And we put like 1,300 plus people, and we turned away 400 or more people from that show. And Terry Taylor came. He was with WCW at the time, and came up to watch. And he and I were sitting up in the bleachers watching Benoit and Jericho in the main event. Mm-hmm. And he said, you know what? They're working harder for you for nothing than they work for us for a big payday. But the thing was, it was never talked about among the guys, but all the guys coming from the three brands, it was a bit of a competition out there. Everybody wanted to. Well, on the 2000 show, that was the Regal. If you haven't seen it, boys, find it and look at it. One of the greatest matches of modern times. Chris Benoit and Steven Regal.
Mm-hmm.
It's about
check it out. Absolutely.
Yeah, this was the third Pillman show. It was a Schmidt Field House at Xavier University, about 2,300 people, and they wrestled. They made it was competition. Now you realize on this show, we had stars from all the big companies. Who was it? Raven and Just Incredible defended the ECW title. Eddie Guerrero was there, Dean Malenko, Kevin Nash. I mean, my God, there was stars all over the place, right?
Wow.
I was
Yeah.
telling my kids, I said, you'll want to watch the Regal Benoit match. And I said, because you're going to learn something. Bring pencil and paper and take notes. But when that match started, I was back by the sound guys squatting down in front of their bench and tables there. And they started to draw me in. And by the time that match, if you happen to find it on YouTube, and it should be out there, or we'll sell it to you on the Pillman Memorial set. Anyway, I was right down by the apron, right? I mean, I knew I could feel it coming, right? They were bringing this crowd. It started out, you could hear a couple idiots in the audience saying, boring, boring. And I thought, are you insane? And those guys, but when Benoit hit the finish, that place came unglued. And I jumped up on the apron and I took the microphone from, I forget which one of the ring announcers out there. And I said, no matter what you see on television, this was a wrestling match, a professional wrestling match. And boys, if you haven't seen it, watch it. It's beautiful. It really is. I use it as a teaching tool, as does Dr. Tom and Rudy Gonzalez as well. And you know what? Talk about a class guy, Regal. He was here in town. They did a appreciation thing for Bobby Eaton 4 years ago. And it was a surprise for Bobby. And anyway, so he came up, right, to say hello and everything. And when he came up to me and we started, he said, and I want to thank you for the opportunity at the Pillman. I said, let me thank you because you guys made that damn show and you made a legend out of that match. And he said, but it was just a simple wrestling match. And I said, that's why it was so damn good.
Yeah.
Because it was a simple wrestling match. You know?
Despite everything you say, you give me hope that maybe we can turn the clock back.
The promoters the promoters have got to want to take the chance.
Right.
My theory, how long did it take to turn everybody into this flippy floppy circus? I mean, it didn't happen over.
Yeah.
How many fans, when WCW went belly up, how many fans stopped watching altogether? Several 100,000, right? I mean, that's already been documented, right? Okay. So you're not going to bring them back overnight.
Right.
But even that hardcore entertainment, I don't know, the kids that watch AEW, I watch it because I have a podcast, not because some of it is very good. Other things, I just roll my eyes and fire the bong up. So I'm
Makes it more interesting that way, right?
Yeah, right.
Les, I was going to ask you, have you ever worked in Canada?
Sure. Calgary in
Calgary, I thought so.
62, and in the Maritimes in 71.
Okay, for the Cormiers?
Yeah, for Rudy. Yeah,
okay.
For all the Cormiers, yes. That's actually Rudy gave me my start in broadcasting.
Oh.
Yeah, well, I just gone into wrestle, right? That's the only reason I'd gone up there. But when he was as I mentioned earlier, he was my next door neighbor in the Carolinas before he opened that territory. And we rode together a lot and in talking. And I had mentioned to him several times that I thought when I got tired of taking bumps, I'd like to pursue broadcasting because, after I'd met Gordon in 67 when I was NWA Rookie of the Year and went to Florida for the ceremony and everything and heard him, because back then there weren't great broadcasters at all. I mean, some of them were like the kiddie show on the local TV and they've given $50 and he was putting himself over more than he was putting the matches over. Gordon was legitimate, right? And so, yeah, it's a crazy thing. But I don't know. It's somebody says you need to write a book. I said, I don't know. I couldn't write. I can write stories. I've been writing wrestling stories for a lot of years, but to sit and write a whole book.
I was gonna ask you if you had a book out. I was scouring the internet a little bit to see if there was a book. If anybody should write a book, it should be you, sir. I mean, we'd love to hear.
Harley Race, Ricky Steamboat and I. It's out of print now, but we put out a training manual, which is available. I know people pick it up on Amazon.
I have a copy.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, Pro Wrestlers Workout and Instructional Guide.
Ah, very good.
Wow.
Yeah.
Les, a couple things. Remind me of a person we had on the show who is still training today at Gleason's Gym in the Bronx or New York area, Mr. Johnny Rods. And the other thing is, any Iron Sheik or Andre the Giant stories from you, sir?
Oh, sure, I can give you. Johnny, I've never met. I've heard a lot of good things about him, and obviously I know some of the guys he's trained. So yeah, I'd be respectful of what he's done. Andre, God.
We heard a Ken Patera Andre drinking story one day from Vegas.
Well, the first time Andre, first time he came into the Carolina, the first time, yeah, he came into the Carolinas. George, Mr. Crockett asked me. I took him to Raleigh. Well, first of all, I went to High Point to get some publicity pictures at the TV station with him there, and then we went on to Raleigh for the matches. Scott Casey, Cowboy Scott Casey, rode with me. I was teaching him at the time tag team wrestling. So anyway, after the matches up there, we stopped at a convenience store. Raleigh is about 140 miles from Charlotte, and I got Cokes and stuff and some snacks, and I don't remember what Scott got. Andre bought a case of beer. And he had the back seat of my Buick, right? So we're on down the road and talking and carrying on, and finally we're about 40 miles out of Charlotte, and Andre tapped it. Hey, boss. Everybody was boss. Hey,
Yeah.
boss. Yeah, Andre. Another beer stop. He'd get that case of beer in about 100 miles, right?
Wow.
And I said, well, Casey and I are going to a club when we get to Charlotte. It's just another 40 miles. Maybe you'd like to go there. Okay, boss, that's good. We'll go to the club. So this Tuesday night, we knew it wouldn't be a huge crowd or anything. So we walk in, and I said, I've got to go to the bathroom. Casey said, I'll get us a table. And Andre said, I got to go to the bathroom too, boss. So we go in, excuse me. And I'm standing at one urinal, and he's standing at another. And all of a sudden, I hear a female's voice. This is in the 70s now, right? And I turn my head, and here comes this woman walking across the floor. And she walks up to Andre's stall, and she looks, and she said, I just want to see if all the body parts matched. And turned around and walked out.
Oh man, I mean his hands were huge enough, so I can't imagine.
We're in Knoxville a few years later. We're at a club here. He and I and one of the referees sitting at a table, and just mind our own business. And here comes this guy walking up, who's probably 150 pounds, soaking wet, right? About 5'7", 5'8", and he makes an open spot on our table and puts his arm up, wants to arm wrestle Andre. And I thought, is this man completely insane? Or whatever he's smoking, where can I get some? Right? That was more the point. But anyway, it's just the look on Andre's face. The guys, and Andre says, I think you'll go sit down now. The guy didn't say a word, just turned around and walked away. That was the end of it right there.
We used to do Sheik tweets. He was on Twitter every week, and it was just awesome. And we miss him, but we love Iron Sheik stories.
Wow, Sheiky. I knew Cosro when he was just Cosro, right? When he was just had been helping Vern train wrestlers and was just wrestling without the Sheik gimmick. But when I was running the tours for WCW in Ohio, Michigan, and West Virginia in 82 and 83, Cosro rode with me quite a bit. And, the only thing I say about the recent years he was on all the time. I don't think there was, unless he was asleep, he was being the sheik all the time. He was a very learned guy, very intelligent. You know, he talked to me about, you know, being a bodyguard and back in Iran and how he would love to go home and see his sister and his mother and father, but he was afraid, you know, that they'd put him in prison if he did. But I remember telling about the bodyguards. He said, you know, I don't consider myself to be a brilliant man, but I saw guys falling around me, you know, and I knew pretty soon somebody was going to point a gun at me or a bomb or something. So I knew it was time to get out. But you know, we did the clubs,
Yes.
you know, with Indian clubs on the tour, and if you could match Zib's or Khosrow's the way he performed with him, then you could win $10,000, right? Of course, nobody did, but I got a little antsy. We were in I forget. We were in Lansing. Which college? Michigan State or Michigan? Well, it don't matter. But anyway, the promoter, the local guy, had some of the offensive linemen from the university's football team as security, right? And they wanted to try the clubs. And these are 300-pound guys, right? I'm thinking, man, I hope that box office got $10,000 tonight because I may be coughing it up. They couldn't do it either. They couldn't do it either. We almost had a big problem with it in Dayton, Ohio, at the old Hare Arena. The softball team had come to the matches after a game, and they had a few beers. And one of the guys wanted to try it, and they let him in the ring. And he got frustrated and threw one of the clubs down. And Zib, Khosrow got in his face. We thought, oh, here we go. But they got it caught. Once a few more of my guys came down at the ringside, it went right down. It was over before it started, but I'm thinking, oh, I don't need to call back to Atlanta and say, guess what happened tonight? I just had to bail 6 of my guys out of jail.
Yeah.
Guys, I just want to say one thing before you get ready to wrap it up here. We were talking about this a moment ago. This is the book that Les was talking about.
Very good.
And let me tell you, with Harley and Les and Ricky Steamboat, this book is phenomenal with what they show you inside. Picture. If you can catch the back of it, they show you a snap mare. And they actually go through how close it is. So they showed Les, you did one of these seminars at Cauliflower one year with Ricky and Harley. And I remember I was in awe at what you guys were doing and showing some of the young talent there how to work wrestling. So I just thought I'd say that you have been an important part of this business, man.
I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Let me say the pleasure has been all mine. Believe me, realize, and I'm going to be an 83-year-old kid still living his dream. For God's sakes,
That's awesome. That's awesome.
And now, in regard to that book, it teaches you wrestling moves, like certain moves and that sort of thing. Because I guess what I want to do is, Chris, me and you, let's get a copy, and we'll put on a match for one of our podcasts. We'll set up a ring or something, or a match or something.
Figure 4 camel club, right?
That's it, man.
I'm looking at that Bears baseball cap and thinking your quarterback is a Buckeye. I don't have my Buckeyes cap on, or I should go put it on.
Yeah, I know. Being a Bears fan is hard. Very hard.
I'm sure it is.
They are the jobbers right now of the NFL, along with the Denver Broncos. So,
in Western New York, Buffalo Bill territory, right?
That's right. That's right. So, guys, I'm going to segue into our jobber of the week, if you will, our enhancement talent. So, Les, just to make you familiar with it, we feature a jobber of the week on this show, where we just pick one of the guys from like the 80s or 90s, the guys that put in the grunt work and worked with the marquee guys on Superstars of Wrestling or Wrestling Challenge. We love to make a little bit of fun of them, but also give them some love as well.
Carpenters,
by all means.
Exactly.
Carpenters.
A new
And
term.
this week's jobber is David Stoudemire, and I don't know where he bought that jacket, but and again the haircuts, man, you got to love the haircuts. I don't know if he was had the Soul Glow endorsement going on here, but there's Dave Stoudemire, who acquired a 0-27 career record, hailed out of Tucson, Arizona, weighing in at 222 pounds. He wrestled from 1987 until 1989. Again, mainly on Superstars of Wrestling and Wrestling Challenge. Now, the match I did find with him on YouTube was a match with the Macho Man Randy Savage, that you see there. The bizarre thing, I don't know if it was bizarre or just unexpected weird twist, was before the match even started, Mr. T made an appearance, and both wrestlers were in the ring, and the ring announcer came on the microphone and said, we have a special appearance from a gentleman about to make his way down the aisle. All of a sudden, it's Mr. T. He gets in the face of the Macho Man, and the Macho Man ultimately ends up turning his back on him. They didn't throw any blows at each other or anything like that, but they had a little stand down there, and then Macho Man took care of business against David Stoudemire there. And the Macho Man, interestingly enough, in that match, never removed his sunglasses or headband there. He was pissed off from Mr. T, and he took care of this guy in about 3 minutes. With the lovely Miss Elizabeth watching. So, again, a shout out to David Stoudemire, 0-27 career with the World Wrestling Federation, and some pretty awesome locks there on his head. So, shout out to him, and shout out to the late Macho Man, and Miss Elizabeth, and also Mr. T, who made an appearance in that match, which was just a random thing, but I thought was pretty cool. So, shout out to David Stoudemire.
You've shown me a wrestler I'd never heard of and never saw before in my life.
And that's why we do it. We got to give these guys some love, right?
We're making a joke, but when I say Carpenters, you realize some of those guys are better workers than the guys they put over. They had to be.
Yeah.
Because they had to stay relevant themselves, because they were building guys to go past them, right? But they had to keep a job too, so that they couldn't just, it wasn't like a squash job, right? Those guys were invaluable.
Absolutely, doing that frontline grunt work, if you will,
yes,
to elevate the stars. So yeah, good stuff, gentlemen. This has been awesome. John, I don't know if we're gonna wrap up with these gentlemen still on with us, or if you guys want to take off and go watch some football, whatever the case may be.
I'll take away first.
Go ahead, Chris.
John, if you will. We'd like to thank all our viewers on all of our platforms, our home on Facebook, of course, on X, Twitter, @Count Anywhere. There it is right there on your screen, @Count Anywhere. It's growing. I talk to people all the time on Twitter and Facebook, and to get them on this show as well, and they're a great bunch of people. Also, our YouTube channel is Friends with the Z Media Network. Put that in all together under the search on YouTube, and you will see not only this show, Falls Count Anywhere, but all of John's sports shows and his political show. It's we are about 55, 53 people. We need about 1,000, I understand.
Yeah.
You're getting there, and we're all on Spotify. And John, I know I forget, but go ahead about the Facebook Star Program quick.
Oh, yeah. If you're out there and you're enjoying this show, send us some stars. 99 cents gives us 100 stars. And if we build up enough stars, Facebook will give us an opportunity for advertising. All the money from stars goes into our production, into trying to make things better, look better, maybe be a little more modern instead of doing things the way I'm doing it. And that's it. If you like us, give us stars. 99 cents gives us 100.
Absolutely. Well, guys,
a plug for Wes Maidment and all of his YouTube and Facebook pages there. And Wes has a great show on YouTube. He's had Mr. Shire on before, and it's great, Wes.
Thank you. We have the NWCA podcast and our 5 Facebook groups, all wrestling history, nothing but wrestling history. So we love our wrestling history there.
Yeah. Love it. And Mr. Thatcher, a plug for those DVDs and anything else you want to say.
I'd like to say thank you guys for having me. I've enjoyed it. Hope I haven't bored you to death. But
no, the pleasure was here, sir. It was awesome to speak with you.
Thank you very much. And it's been my pleasure. And thanks, guys like you keep me feeling relevant. And it's great that and George is sober, and we're not even in a revolving restaurant. So that's a plus as well. Smile, George. It's all right.
Hey, you and I would have had about 3 or 4 or 5 beers by now. That
Yeah, right.
restaurant still going. Thanks, guys. I've had a blast as always.
Yes,
Thanks,
thank you very
George.
much.
Thank you, Wes.
We'll
And
stay in
again,
touch.
thank you to Mr. Les Thatcher for joining us, the legendary Les
Thank you.
Thatcher. Awesome stuff. Take care, guys. And well, guys, this was great stuff. Great stories from Mr. Les Thatcher. As we wrap up here, we want to thank each and every one of our viewers. Leave a comment, throw us some feedback if you will, and guys, we'll pick it up again next week. Take care, guys.
Yep.